my name is Alina. Together with a team of professionals, we created the pattern for this refined and lightweight dress. In this video, we'll guide you step by step through the sewing process. We're using the full printable PDF bird dress pattern, with detailed instructions available in our Etsy shop, link in the description. Let's get started.
After printing out the pattern, be sure to check the test square. The bird dress pattern consists of the following pieces: back piece, with a center back fold and pleat, with an integrated pocket, cut 1 piece. Front piece with integrated pocket, cut 2 pieces. Sleeve piece, cut 2 pieces. Shoulder pad piece made of foam, cut 2 pieces. Shoulder pad cover piece, cut 4 pieces. Back facing piece, cut 1 piece, and front facing piece, cut 2 pieces. How to choose your size: using the front piece as an example, on the information sheet, select the line of your size. For example, my size is 40, it is marked with this line. On the pattern piece, find and trace the outline of your size. Trace the bust dart of your size. Mark the pocket opening line for your size. Mark the notches of your size, along the armhole, at the dart point, near the waist and hip lines, and the notch for the zipper bottom at the center front. On the pattern pieces, you will see small numbers. They show which notches and sides to join. Note, we align not the numbers but the notches, waistline, and hip line. Numbers are only a guide for matching pattern sides. For example, numbers near notches 6, 7, 8 should be matched with notches 6, 7, 8 of your size on the sleeve piece. Numbers 1, 1 mean joining bust dart sides. Numbers 2, 3, and 4 show where the front and back side seams meet, near the armhole bottom, near the waist, and near the hips. Remember, we align not the numbers but the notches, waistline, and hip line. Numbers are only a guide for matching pattern sides. Numbers 5 shows where the front and back meet at the neckline to sew the shoulder seam. Numbers 18 shows which sides of the front neckline should be matched with the front facing. Seam allowances are included in the pattern. They are marked on every side of each piece. To find the sewing line, move inward from the edge by the seam allowance amount. Large numbers are for fabric layout guidance, they are marked on the layout diagram. On the front pieces and facings, you will see gray dots. These mark where to apply fusible tape to the pocket opening and front neckline, and where to fully interface the facings. On the front and back facings, small numbers 11 indicate correct alignment at the neckline for sewing the shoulder seam. On the sleeves and shoulder pad covers, there are darts with stitching lines. Choose your size line on them as well. Next, trace the outline of the entire sleeve along the line for your size. Mark your size notches. Near small numbers 7 and 8, choose 2 notches of your size. These small numbers mean matching sleeve notches 6, 7, 8 to the front armhole, and notches 9, 10 to the back armhole. Numbers 14 shows where to match the top of the back armhole with the top of the back sleeve. To find the seam line, move inward from your size line by the seam allowance amount. Here is how the seam line will look, shown with a blue line. Numbers 12 and 13 mean joining a dart to notch 12, 13. We will show this step in detail in the lesson. On the shoulder pad cover, also choose your size dart seam line. Trace the outline of your size piece. Moving inward by the given seam allowances, you get the stitching line, shown in blue. Numbers 15 mean these edges should be sewn together. Numbers 16 and 17 mean joining a dart to notch 16, 17. The foam shoulder pad piece is sewn without seam allowances, edge to edge with a zigzag stitch. Choose your size line on this piece. Numbers 15 mean these edges of the piece should be sewn together. Then match dart marks 16 and 17 with notches 16, 17. For sewing, you will need the following materials. Main fabric. You will find recommendations for selecting fabric in the instructions: non-woven or woven fusible interfacing. Foam for shoulder pads. 60 cm long zipper. A fusible stay tape is also needed to reinforce the neckline edge of the front, back, and pocket opening line. Thread for seam finishing in matching fabric color. And contrasting thicker thread for top stitching. For sloping shoulders, it's worth purchasing additional ready-made shoulder pads. Required equipment for sewing: sewing machine, Overlock machine. Optionally, if you have one, that's great, otherwise, we'll show settings for regular machines. You will need the following tools for work: fabric scissors, paper scissors, thread snips, sewing pins, universal sewing machine needles size 70 to 80, zipper foot. Iron and ironing board are also required. Before starting work, the fabric must be pre-shrunk. To do this, fold the fabric right sides together and steam press. For pre-shrinking, select iron temperature based on fabric type, starting with low heat. Press the entire fabric section this way. Lay fabric on flat surface, right sides facing in. Place pattern on top following the layout in instruction 1. Lay out the pattern pieces according to the grain line direction. The grain line direction is indicated by an arrow on each pattern piece. Cut out the pattern pieces along the pattern contour, marking all notches by making 2 mm clips into the seam allowance. Next, prepare the interfacing and foam pieces. You'll find the layout diagrams for these pieces in the instruction 1. Place the foam shoulder pad pattern onto the foam. You can pin it loosely, without securing it tightly. Trace around it with a fabric marker or chalk. When tracing, make sure to transfer notch 16, 17. After cutting, you should have the following pieces. The back piece must be with a fold. With integrated pocket bag. 1 solid piece. 2 front pieces with integrated pocket bags. Sleeves. 2 pieces. Front and back facing pieces. Cut the back facing piece on fold. And you'll get 1 back facing piece and 2 front facing pieces. From foam, you should get 2 shoulder pad pieces and 4 shoulder pad covers from the main fabric. From interfacing, cut 1 back facing piece on fold and 2 front facing pieces. Let's move on to fusing. Lay out the facing pieces wrong side up, face down. Like this. Next, place the interfacing pieces wrong sides together with the facing pieces from the main fabric. To determine the right and wrong side of the interfacing, examine it carefully. This is the wrong side and you can clearly see the glue dots that are present from the manufacturer. On the right side, the material structure is smooth. Next, using an iron, fuse the interfacing to our piece, placing the iron and leaving it in position for 5 to 10 seconds. Always start with a low heat setting. An iron can easily damage interfacing. Test first on a sample. Or use a pressing cloth between the iron and interfacing. When fusing, use a pressing and lifting motion, not sliding the iron. Do not stretch the piece in different directions to avoid distortion, instead lift and move the iron across the piece. Like this. After fusing the pieces, lay them flat on a table so the glue cools and the interfacing bonds well with our pieces. On the front pieces, you need to fuse the neckline edge and the pocket opening line. For this we use stay tape. The stay tape has a right and wrong side. You can see and feel the dots on the wrong side when you run your fingers over them like this. The right side has a smoother texture, without visible dots. Apply the stay tape with wrong side to wrong side of the piece along the neckline edge and fuse it with an iron, slightly stretching the stay tape. Fuse the second side in the same way. Fuse the pocket opening line on the front pieces. Similarly, fuse the second front piece. On the back piece, you need to fuse the back neckline. Place the stay tape wrong side to wrong side of the back neckline. In the curved area of the back neckline, you can make small clips in the stay tape, no more than 2 mm, to help it lie better in these areas. We have fused the front neckline facings, 2 pieces, back neckline facing, 1 piece, dress front neckline, 2 pieces, back neckline, 1 piece, and the pocket opening line, on both front dress pieces. Now we'll sew. We start sewing the dress by preparing the back piece. We need to prepare the back pleat and sew it closed. For this, you have a vertical dotted line marked on your pattern piece where you need to stitch the back pleat. This is where it is. We also need to transfer this line onto the cut back piece. To do this, fold the back piece right sides together along the center back fold line. Using a ruler, mark the length and width of our fold. Width from the fold 5 cm, length 15 cm. Using chalk, draw this auxiliary line. We got this markup. Now we need to stitch the pleat along only the vertical line. To prevent the fabric from shifting while stitching, secure it with pins. Stitch from the neckline to the bottom of the vertical line. Be sure to backstitch at the beginning and end of the line. Press the seam without pressing the fold line of the pleat. Just the stitching line. Next, unfold the piece and press the pleat in opposite directions. Align the center of the pleat with the seam. Press up only to the horizontal line. From the front side, you need to mark this horizontal line to secure our pleat. We do this using a ruler and chalk. Measure the pleat width, 5 cm. This is where the line will begin and this is where it will end. We secure this line with pins so that the pieces don't move. Next, we stitch the line. Also, along the neckline of the back, we secure the allowances of our pleat with pins. We stitch an auxiliary line 0.5 cm from the neckline edge. We press our stitches and set the back piece aside for now. On the front pieces, we need to mark the seams for stitching bust darts. We do this as follows. On the front pattern pieces, I cut one side of the dart like this, then I fold the other side. Align the front pattern piece with the dress at the 1, 1 markings. Here they are. Place the pattern and mark dart lines. I'm doing this with a thermal marking paste that disappears after ironing. Mark up the bust dart on the second front piece of the dress in the same way. We mark the darts from the wrong side. Fold the bust dart in half, with the right side inward, aligning the 1, 1 marks and dart lines. Pin dart lines with pins. Fold and pin the dart on the second front piece in the same way. Next, we go to the sewing machine and stitch along the marked line of the dart. After sewing the dart, with mandatory backstitches at the beginning and end of the seam, pull the thread ends inside the dart allowance. After sewing the darts, check that they are the same length and end at the same point. In our case, with a printed fabric, the darts should end at the same place, equally on both sides, so that when wearing the dress, the darts are invisible. Next, press the dart stitching lines. Then press the dart upwards. To fix the allowance position, you can use a wooden pressing block. Note that when pressing the dart apex, you can lift the front piece to thoroughly press the dart apex. Lay out the back piece in front of you, face up. Now place the front piece on the back piece, face to face. Match up the notches marked on pattern pieces numbers 2, 3, and 4. First pin at notches 2, 3, 4, waistline, hip line, and bottom of the dress. Then pin between the notches. Next, use a ruler and chalk to mark the seam allowances to accurately reach point 3, pivot on the machine, sew the pocket with the bag, reach point 4, and complete the side seam. To do this, use a ruler to mark 1 cm allowances. Next, go to the sewing machine and sew the side seam. Stitch starting from the armhole edge, continue to point 3, pivot on the machine, and sew the pocket bag. In this area, the stitching can be curved. We reach point 4 and then sew the side seam to the bottom. Stitch the opposite side seam starting from the bottom hem of the dress. Stitch up to our marking and then continue sewing exactly along it. Next, the side seam allowances and pocket bag seam allowances need to be overlocked, but we will overlock them from the back side rather than from the front side as usual. Because after pressing, pocket bag and seam allowances will lie toward dress front. Therefore, PPLY the overlock stitch from the back side. When reaching the pocket bag turn, disengage the overlock knife, so that when passing this point, the overlock knife doesn't cut the seam allowances. I sew with the overlock stitch as close as possible to the corner, guiding the presser foot right up to it. I raise the presser foot. This way, by creating small pleats here, I'm evening out the seam allowance to ensure clean overlock finishing in this area. Then you can turn the knife back on. Please note that when serging the pocket bag corners, you need to disengage the overlock knife. And here we carefully arrange the seam allowances and stitch the seam. Here at the turn, right here, we need to make a small fold. When sewing these intricate sections, stitch very slowly. Then resume normal speed along the straight line. Then you can turn the knife back on. For those who don't have an overlock machine, the edges can be finished with a zigzag stitch on a regular sewing machine. Use the following settings on your sewing machine. Set the zigzag stitch with a stitch length of 1.5 mm and stitch width of 5 to 6 mm. While applying the zigzag stitch, fold the edge slightly, about 2 to 3 mm, then stitch over it. You can create this type of edge finish even on a regular domestic sewing machine. After stitching, it's essential to press the seam. Steam press the seam allowances, and allow the fabric to cool slightly. Next, turn the garment right side down, and we need to press the side seam allowances toward the front of the dress. The pocket opening line is visible through this fabric, we can see how it aligns here. It should lie straight and even, without any distortion. To set the allowances in position while they cool, use a wooden pressing block like this. This is how your completed pocket should look. Take the garment and pull back the pocket opening from the pocket bag. Position it under the presser foot and stitch along the pocket opening line 0.1 cm from the edge. Then take these long thread tails, tie them into several secure knots, and use a needle to conceal them within the seam allowance. Such a neat stitch we're getting. Next, press the side seam in the pocket area and we'll move on to working with the sleeve. Be sure to mark the dart allowances on the sleeve using the pattern. For convenience, I've marked the stitching line on the pattern and carefully cut it out with scissors. Then I place it against the sleeve, align all edges, and transfer the notch and seam line. We'll prepare the sleeves for insertion into the armscye. Fold the sleeve right sides together and align the inner edges. Pin the edges together and stitch a joining seam 1 cm from the edge with backstitching at the beginning and end of the seam. Next, we need to overlock the seam allowances. This should be done from the front sleeve side. How do we understand which part is the front? Look at the sleeve cap. On the pattern, we have notches on the sleeve cap. On the front sleeve cap piece, there are marks 7 and 8 here. There are 2 of them together and they are very clearly visible. Here are both. On the back sleeve cap piece, there is 1 notch in this area, number 10. Overlock from the front sleeve side. Place the sleeve pieces on the ironing board and press the seams. The seam allowances need to be pressed toward the back of the sleeve. For this, I use a sleeve roll and press the seam allowances towards the back of the sleeve. Our next step will be finishing the sleeve hem. To make this easier, we need to mark the hem allowances. We do this as follows. First, we mark a line 1 cm from the edge. Then from the first line we draw another line 1 cm up. We do this around the entire circumference of the sleeve and on both sleeves. We turn under the seam allowance first by 1 cm, then by another centimeter, pin the seam allowances and baste them. Next, we stitch the sleeve hems. Press the finished stitched sleeve hems. Next, we set in the sleeves into the armholes. I have already prepared one side and one sleeve. I pin the sleeve cap to the armhole. Now I will show you how to pin the second sleeve. We place the garment in front of us and take the sleeve. Place the sleeve into the armhole, right sides together. First, match the seams. The seam allowances face opposite directions, but the seams must match. Side seam of the dress and inner sleeve seam. Match front armhole to front sleeve cap. They are marked on the patterns as mark 6, then here 7 and 8, and also on the front of the sleeve there are also these marks 6 and here 7 and 8. Match the notches and pin them together. Here is notch 6, 7 and 8. Here they are together. Please note that all markings must correspond to the markings of your pattern size. Also, the back armhole has notches. There are notches 9 and 10, and also mark 14. The same on back part of sleeve. We also have to match these marks. Notches 10, here's 9. And between marks we also secure the pieces with pins. Next, set in the sleeve into the armhole and serge the seam allowance. Set in the sleeve with a 1 cm seam allowance. Secure the seam with backstitches at the beginning and end. Overlock the seam allowances of the sleeve insertions. Do it from the garment side. Lay the garment out on the pressing board. Ensure the fabric is positioned flat. First, press the seam up to the curved area. Next, I'll use a specialized pressing ham. Place the dress armhole on this ham. Lay the seam allowances flat. You can also place this side on the ham or the pressing board. Next, I'll position the hem underneath the garment. Lay out the garment carefully. And press the seam allowances towards the sleeve. Use a wooden block to set and cool the seams. Move to the other sleeve side. Next, necessary to join the shoulder edges. Place the shoulder edges right sides together. Match the neckline point, marked as 5 on the pattern, the armhole seams and the sleeve shoulder edges. Align them and secure with pins. Proceed to the sewing machine and stitch the shoulder edges with a joining seam, then overcast the seam allowances. Press the shoulder seams. Use a tailor's ham to press the seam allowances. Position the tailor's ham on its edge to get as close as possible to the shoulder seam, and press the seam allowances. Now we need to stitch the dart on the sleeve. This is what it looks like when completed. This is how the sleeve appears before the shoulder edges are joined together. This is what we will be sewing now. Fold the dart of sleeve piece right sides together, aligning notches 12, 13. We will stitch along this line that we marked at the beginning of work. Align the dart edges and pin them at notches 12, 13, right here. Now we need to stitch along this marked line, then serge the seam allowances. The thread ends of the overlock stitch need to be slightly unraveled and tied into a knot, then pulled into the seam allowance. Press the dart seam. Insert a tailor's ham into the sleeve and press the seam allowance downward. Then turn the garment right side out, place the ham inside the sleeve and press dart seam from the right side. This is the shoulder shape you should achieve. Before inserting the zipper, it needs to be pre-shrunk, just like the main fabric. This zipper tape can also shrink. We do this using a steam iron, starting with the minimum temperature setting, then increasing if necessary. The center front edges need to be overlocked. We stitch from the right side of the garment, from the neckline down to the hem. Press the seam after stitching. Lay the dress right side up in front of you, locate the center front edge that we've already pressed. There should also be a notch mark for the zipper bottom at the dress center front edge. This is the reference notch mark that we will sew in the zipper. Find your reference mark and then pin the zipper right sides together. This means we need to flip the zipper over and pin it like this, aligning the zipper edge with our bottom zipper mark. To make this easier, our zipper is separating, so we can unzip it and work with each side separately. This will be our left side and this will be our right side. It's important not to confuse the right and wrong sides during pinning and sewing. Therefore, check its placement, position the zipper tape face to face with the dress center edge, align the dress bottom notch with zipper bottom, and baste the zipper tape. Pin the zipper along its entire length up to the neckline. Do it without stretching the zipper tape or the fabric itself, so the zipper lies smoothly without any unwanted waves. You can pin both sides of the zipper at once. In this case, we need to match the print, so I will first pin the zipper tape on one side, stitch it completely, mark the reference points, and then transfer these marks to the other side of the zipper, ensuring print alignment after seaming. Install the zipper foot on the machine for attaching the zipper. This foot has two positions, left and right. Position it so that this edge is as close as possible to the zipper coil. There's a coil here, so we position this side of the foot. For correct zipper installation at the top, mark on the seam line where it intersects with the neckline using disappearing ink. This is the point where they intersect, at the turning point, where we need to pivot the zipper. After basting the zipper tape to the dress, we still need to properly finish the top of the zipper where we made this marking. Place the zipper to the marking and rotate it 45 degrees so that the zipper teeth end precisely at the perpendicular point we marked. The intersection point of the neckline seam and center front seam. Rotate the zipper and create a small fold on the zipper tape, securing it with pins. Now we need to stitch so that this fold is concealed in the seam allowances and secure the zipper end in this place. Trim away the excess. In this way, we attach the zipper. Now I will secure the tape edge, and then stitch the zipper along the dress. To make stitching as convenient as possible here, I have moved the needle to its far position and, carefully turning the handwheel manually from where the zipper coil begins, I make neat stitches while straightening the zipper during the sewing process. Take 3 to 4 stitches forward, then backstitch manually. And then continue stitching the zipper. Completing the zipper installation. Here you also need to carefully finish the stitch almost by hand. To avoid any loose thread ends here, I pull them to the wrong side and tie knots. Then you can hide them in the seam allowance. Next, you need to close the zipper and check how it looks here. Since our fabric has a quite pronounced print, like a stripe with a print, we need to transfer these stripes to the other side of the zipper so that when we continue to sew the second half of the zipper with the fabric, it will match the print we already have here. So we must definitely transfer these marks. If your fabric doesn't have a pronounced print, it's much simpler. You simply attach the second zipper half by aligning the main marks on the neckline and on the bottom. Next, take the second half of the dress front and position it right sides together with the zipper, aligning our reference marks and ensuring they match. The print alignment must also match. Check the print alignment along the entire length, pin in place. Next, in this area, you also need to fold the zipper tape, create a neat fold like this, and pin it. Ensure the zipper coil aligns exactly with this mark we placed. Then stitch. If you're concerned about fabric distortion, you can first baste the zipper. We'll separate the zipper to make it easier to sew now. And we will stitch the second part of zipper in the same way from the neckline to the bottom. I have reached the point where we have the zipper slider. To move it out of the way and finish the zipper here, raise the presser foot and the needle, as the slider doesn't always pass through easily. Move the zipper slider to the side. Lower the presser foot and needle, then complete the zipper attachment. After installing the zipper, check the quality of the completed operation. Close the zipper and check the functionality of the closure. Proceed with pressing operations. Press the seam and zipper tape after attachment. Turn the zipper to the wrong side and press the garment edge. Similarly, press the seam allowances that are below the zipper. Turn and press the garment hem first at 0.5 centimeters. Then fold and press again at 1 centimeter. After pressing the hem allowance, unfold the seam allowances below the zipper so they lie flat. And refold the hem seam allowance as previously pressed. Apply a decorative top stitch with contrasting thread on the right side of the dress hem. Press the completed hem. Mark the seam lines on the front and back facings to ensure accurate assembly. This ensures proper alignment between the back and front facings. Place the facing shoulder edges of front and back pieces, right sides together. Align mark 11 and shoulder edges. Important, align and match the facings along seam line. If stitched in this manner, when turned to the right side, the facings will have an undesirable step. Therefore, for a smooth transition, start and end the stitching line by aligning the seam lines, so that when the facing is unfolded, it forms one continuous smooth line. So, place the pieces right sides together and pin in place. Press the shoulder seam allowances, then open and press allowances in opposite directions. Overlock the free edge of the back and front facings. Overlock the facing right side up. Press the overlocked facing edge. Next step will be processing the neckline. Place your prepared facing right sides together with the garment. Align the edges and sides of pieces at 18. Unfold the zipper and attach the facing to it. Align the edges and pin them together with sewing pins. During the pinning process, don't forget about the notches that we have marked. Align the center back with the center of the back neckline facing, and also match the shoulder seams. First pin notches at the control marks, at the beginning and end of the facing, and then between them. Next, we need to stitch along the neckline at a distance of 1 centimeter from the edge. Also stitch an auxiliary line on the facing 0.5 centimeters from the start of the zipper to secure the facing edge. Fold under the corner of the seam allowance to ensure a neat and clean finish in this area when complete. Which we have here like this. Here it was like this, we fold it, leveling this edge. Then, when the neckline is complete, it will have a clean finish and no seam allowances will be visible in this area. This is how we attach the facing, with folded corner seam allowances. Next, we need to clip the seam allowances where we attach the facing to the back neckline. To do this, make notches 1 to 2 mm from the stitching line, specifically in the curved area. Do this carefully to avoid damaging the stitching. Turn it right side out and check if we have enough notches. We may need to make a small clips on the front neckline to ensure the neckline lies flat. Like this, I am adding additional clips in these areas. Now press the seam and press the facing to the wrong side. For convenience, you can press the seam on a tailor's ham. Next, trim the seam allowance here, leaving it 0.5 to 0.7 mm wide. Lay out the facing and garment flat, then press the seam allowances toward the facing. Now turn right side out in this area. And push out the corner. Next, press the neckline edge and create a 1 mm roll of the main fabric. So the edge looks neat from the right side with no facing peeking out. Stitch a decorative line from bottom up along center front, along neckline and down the opposite front edge to bottom. We stitch a decorative securing line 0.5 mm wide from the zipper seam line. I do this by moving the needle to the far left position, otherwise it will be very difficult to get close to the zipper. And here we need to make a clean and neat transition. Also, don't forget that where we have the folded zipper, we need to be very careful not to break the needle. I don't backstitch at the beginning and end of the seam since the decorative thread would look too bulky, instead I leave long tails. Then I tie them into knots and use a needle to hide the thread ends and the seam allowances. This creates a neat finish to the line. The neckline facing needs to be secured at the shoulder seam allowances. For this, we place the facing like this, secure it with a pin and make a bar tack on the machine, connecting the shoulder seam allowance and the facing. To make this bar tack, I fold back these pieces and will be making the bar tack from the shoulder seam side. This is how the bar tack appears. Press the front center edge with our top stitching, then perform the final pressing and steam treatment of the garment. Press all the details carefully. Use specialized tailoring pressing cushions and wooden blocks for garment shaping and pressing. On the shoulder pad cover pieces, it is necessary to mark the stitching line for dart processing. We do this using a pattern. I cut along the seam line with seam allowance offset, and mark them on the fabric with disappearing ink. Be sure to remember to transfer control mark 16, 17. We do this operation on all shoulder pad cover pieces, then fold them right sides together and pin. Align shoulder edges, matching sides at mark 15. Next, we sew the shoulder seams on the pad cover with 0.7 cm seam allowance. Press the seam. Press the allowances in opposite directions. Do this on each piece. We should get 4 of these. Next, the dart on the shoulder pad also needs to be pinned. By aligning marks 16, 17 with the shoulder seam. And then we will stitch along our marked seam dart line. The dart seam is sewn. Backstitching at the beginning and end of the seam. The seam needs to be pressed. And then press downward. Pull the piece over the tailor's ham. And press the seam allowance downward. The foam pad must be sewn like this. Sewing a zigzag edge-to-edge stitch. To do this, we set the zigzag stitch on the machine. We set stitch with length 2 to 2.5 mm. Width 5 to 6 mm. Place foam edge to edge like this. Because we have no seam allowances. And sew a zigzag stitch first along the shoulder edge. And then along the dart. Sew the shoulder foam pad with a zigzag stitch along the shoulder edges, aligning sides of piece with marks 15. Align the edges so they are butted together. Make the second piece similar to this one. Next, create a butted seam using a zigzag stitch to join the dart edges, aligning notches 16, 17 with the shoulder seam. Next, identify front and back sides of the shoulder pad. To do this, fold it along the shoulder seam. And we can see that one side of the piece is larger. This will be the back, and this will be the front. The same applies to the shoulder pad cover pieces. We can also fold it and see that the front half is slightly smaller. This will be the front, and this will be the back. After determining which is the back piece and which is the front piece, we find the matching pairs. They should now be placed wrong sides together. Find the matching pairs. Take our shoulder pad and also find the right pair for it. Here we have the piece with the front side. And here it is, and we put them together like this. We place our foam shoulder pad inside the cover. I am fixing our mark 16, 17 here, and also the edge of the shoulder seam with the shoulder seam on the foam. I fix this and then place the second cover piece to the foam, wrong sides together. Similarly, combining our mark 16, 17 with the mark on the foam, I pin it in place, match the shoulder seams and pin it. Cover fabric facing outwards with its right side. Equalizing shoulder seams, here. We have a 0.5 cm allowance along the cover's edge, so they should protrude slightly from the foam pad's edge. We pin all around the edge. The overlock stitch should be placed on the inner side of the shoulder pad, as this part will be more visible than the upper part. The inner part will rest against the arm. This is how our shoulder pad turns out. This thread end needs to be unraveled, tied into a small knot, and concealed within the seam allowance. And then we can attach our pad to the dress. We determine where we will have the front section and where we will have the back section of the shoulder pad. Insert shoulder pad, dart seam toward shoulder edge, this side toward neckline. We find the correct side. Front to front, back to back, dart seam to shoulder edge. And we insert the shoulder pad into our dress shoulder, aligning our shoulder darts. I secure the shoulder pad with a pin in the dart area to prevent it from shifting. And also pin it from neckline side. And then you need to secure the shoulder pad to the shoulder seam allowance using hand stitches. Right here. And you also need to carefully turn it out and secure it here. We take a needle and thread. In a single layer of fabric, secure the shoulder pad to the sleeve dart allowances on the dress. Now we secure the shoulder pad near the neckline by catching just the allowance. Everything is secured. And we can say our dress is ready. Repeat for second pad. And this gives us such a shape-retaining shoulder as a result. This is our finished dress. And if you have more sloping shoulders and this shoulder shape doesn't hold as needed, you should add ready-made shoulder pads 1 cm thick. Fold the shoulder pad in half and mark the center point. This will be our shoulder line. Now we need to attach them to the dress.